So first off, let me say this. That should not be an unpopular opinion. That should be the definitive opinion, what you just shared about pastors and ministers not being mental health um, providers or specialists or those kinds of things. And on the outset, one of the biggest problems. Now, I will say I think this goes both ways. I think that I believe in comprehensive care, and I'll touch on that in a second. But I think the best way in which people get comprehensive care is people stay in their lanes. And so the mental health provider stays in their lane as a mental health provider. The soul care provider stays in their lane as a soul care provider. They partner together for comprehensive care. But if the soul care provider is not trauma informed, then it's going for the mental health provider. It's going to be like banging their head on a wall of granite. And so I think that the fact that in many churches there is an ideology, worldview, perspective that that we shouldn't care about issues like mental health and those kinds of things, and just focus on the spiritual, is detrimental to people. And it's actually, just to be blunt, it is actually a heresy as it relates to the church, historically speaking. So again, I'm a historical theologian. That's my field as it relates to theological studies. And there's a view called Gnosticism, which basically taught that the body was evil and the only thing that was good about people was their soul, was their spirit. And so the greatest aspect of the greatest good was prioritizing people's souls and being, in some sense, looking forward to the day where we will no longer have our bodies. And that was declared an heresy that was constantly attacking the church. And the church's view, historically speaking, was that human beings, those made in the image of God, the Imago Dei, are people who are made up of both mind and body. Body also be including mental mind and stuff like that. So spiritual, so you have the soul, and then you have the body, which includes the physical as well as the mind. And then of course you have categories of, say, like a trichotomy that comes with of mind, body, and soul. But historically speaking, the church has always understood that the body is sacred as well as the soul, and that they cannot be disconnected but from one another. But the part of the holiness of being human is that you are both body, mind, and soul, and that they're interconnected. And so over time, what has happened in the church is that there's become a disconnect of these realities and an embrace, more or less, of that ancient heresy of the body being bad and only focusing and only caring about the spiritual realm. And that has devastated many people because of how the church has embraced that, both the white evangelical church as well as the black church in more recent times has embraced that reality as well. And it's caused so much damage. And so what I first and foremost want to say is that I think that you're absolutely right. And I think that people are right who have been a part of the church and felt like the church was actually counterproductive in their mental health, rather than actually serving as an institution that actually built up or encouraged a mental health. And I'm for recapturing that. And so again, my first book is dealing with spiritual trauma and dealing with the reality that many people within the church who have trauma, especially church-related trauma, don't even have a category of understanding that what they have experienced is church-related trauma. And so first, in order to care and help people heal, they first have to understand that they have been traumatized. And kind of going to what April was saying is that from my experience, the vast majority of people who have trauma do not even realize they have trauma. It becomes normative. It becomes a part of their life. There are people who've been traumatized where pre-trauma, they're extroverts. Post-trauma, they're now hyper introverts, and they just think that they had a personality shift, not realizing that the dynamics of what changed was their trauma. And so in order to help specifically, and especially in my field, Christians heal from from spiritual abuse or spiritual trauma, they first have to come to terms with the reality that they have trauma. There's a reason why reading the Bible is triggering. There's a reason why certain worship songs are triggering. There's a reason why listening to sermons can be triggering. There's a reason why church buildings or congregational settings can be triggering. And people have to understand first that why it's triggering, and then practical realities of how to actually heal and from those various triggers, church related triggers.